universe said, you're not getting it. Baby, you're not getting it. You need to start the next chapter of your life. Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. My name is Key Simone, and I am starting my life over at 31. Let's talk about it. So how has my life changed and why am I starting over? I love to tell you guys. So basically 6 months ago, life was good. Okay, life was great. Life, I didn't have any complaints. Okay, I started a new relationship. I was planning my 31st birthday. I was going on a work trip. Everything was great. Okay, when I got back from that trip, it was a work trip / birthday trip. Things started to really go downhill. End of August, I found out that someone very, very close to me, whose name I will not name, is sick, got sick, is still sick. Life altering news. Okay, and then in September I learned that I had to move out of my rent controlled apartment that I had been in for 7 years because I made too much money. DC has something called an ADU program where your rent is based off of your income and not market price, but your income has to stay within a certain threshold. And I made way more money than that cap. So I had to move, but I was not ready. I will admit it. I was not ready to move out of my building, my neighborhood. I had lived there for a very long time. I turned 25 in that apartment. Then I turned 30 in that apartment. Some relationships started, ended. Friendships started, ended. I mean, I have so many memories. So many memories. I was almost in that apartment for a decade. 7 years is a very long time. So I looked around a little bit, barely, to other apartments, and I saw the prices. Like, I ain't doing that. It was cheaper, okay, for me to stay in my building. So that's what I did. But the way I went about it was pretty aggressive, I will admit. I was calling, emailing, going into office, basically hounding them down, pressed as fuck, to see other units. There was really no rush. They were like, you can stay in your apartment and continue to pay your rent until we figure this out. But I just get so anxious about stuff, and I just get so aggressive about things because I like for things to be in place. And so I really pushed for them to move me into another unit. I had a tour, obviously, all the different units, of course, and I was really just focused on the square footage. I said, if I'm going to pay more, because at that time my rent was going to go up by $600, I want to get more square footage. I was in a 640 square feet apartment. I had outgrown that apartment many years ago, but the price was just too good to give it up. So that's all I focused on. I looked at like 3 or 4 different units and decided on a unit. I was living on the 11th floor. I moved to a unit on the 8th floor, and it was 689 square feet. So I got a lot more square footage. And honestly, the apartment was exactly the same as my last apartment. I mean, the layout was exactly the same. The only difference was the living room was much larger. So that was where the square footage came from. And I had a Juliet balcony. So those two things is what made the apartment different, bigger, but otherwise everything was the same. From unit to unit cost me $3 grand plus, right? Because they end up making me reapply as a new tenant to prove that I could afford the increased rent, which makes sense. But that meant application fee, $700 deposit, first month's rent, which was about $1,832. I had to get a new bed because my bed had broke a couple months earlier. That was another like $300. I had to get new bar stools, $200. I had to get a whole bunch of just like random stuff from like IKEA, things like that, another $200. Lots of money, okay? Lots of money. Was in that apartment a week before my partner at the time saw a pest in the bathroom. By pest, y'all know what I mean. I'm not saying that word. I'm not saying the R word. Y'all know what I mean, okay? In my search of the new unit, I was only focused on square footage. I was not focused on where in the hallway the apartment was. So I absentmindedly moved into an apartment directly across from the trash room. So I assumed that there would be some type of increased activity of some kind. At my previous unit, which was on the 11th floor, I lived on the same hallway as the trash room, but at the very end of the hallway. So like the trash room is here, my unit was like all the way down here. And I think I saw a bug or two like once or twice, but like living across the trash room is much different than living on the same hallway as a trash room, right? So when the first pest was seen, I was like alarmed, but not so much to cause a ruckus. I moved in the beginning of November, right? So right before, probably like a week before Thanksgiving, pest control came and just did a general spray of everyone's apartment, including mine. And then a week after Thanksgiving, my partner at the time saw another pest in my bedroom. That's when I started to get concerned, right? Because I had only been in there a month, and I now seen 2 compared to the 0 I saw living on 11 for 7 years. So I go to my property manager and I said, hey, sis, knock, knock, what's tea? Because what's going on? I just moved to this building. She's like, absolutely, that should not be happening. We're so sorry for that. Let me have pest control come back out. They're gonna do an extensive treatment in your building. They're gonna look at your neighbors' buildings, because I had one person on each side of me, to see if maybe they have issues, extensive treat them, and they're gonna treat the trash room that you're across from. Great. She says, take everything out of your cabinets, everything off the floor. They're gonna come and treat your house. Great. So as I'm pulling things, I'm also checking to see if there's any evidence that there might be a pest issue in the apartment, right? Did not see anything. I'm like, okay, cool. So pest control comes. I can't even tell he comes because they use like this eco-friendly spray where you can't smell it, like the chemicals aren't harsh, but you can see the traps on the ground. I had went and got a whole bunch of stuff that from like Home Depot, because I watched a TikTok about it. Bought all of this stuff, spent like $100 on pesting. Okay, not amazing. Came back, was planning to do my own due diligence, because I just wanted to do even more, create even more protection than what the pest control guy did. Immediately saw another pest in the kitchen. It was the biggest. It was huge, you guys. I literally screamed. I was like, absolutely not. Go to my property manager in tears. I'm like, ma'am, I don't think I'll be able to do this. Like, this is now the 3rd one that I've seen, okay, with my eyes. There's probably more that I have not seen, right? The 3rd one I've seen with my eyes. She's like, you know, I'm like, I'm not gonna try, y'all. I was really dramatic. I'm such a baby. I was like crying in tears, like hyperventilating. Like, the move was very stressful. Getting into the apartment was very, very stressful. I can't even go into details because it would make this video so long. But like, when I say I had to hound them down to get moved in. And when I finally feel like I can breathe after moving in, now I got pissed, right? And so she's like, listen, like, you know when someone's really upset, so you just say stuff to calm them down? She basically like, listen, like, I understand your concerns. I will look to see if there's another unit that you can move into. What's available, right? I'll call you by Friday. We'll get taken care of. Of course, Friday comes and goes. Nothing happens, right? I'm emailing, I'm calling, following up. She's not responding. I go physically up there again, because I think after I seen the 3rd pest, I packed my bag and went to my mom's house for the weekend and for the week, because I don't play them games, right? She's like, I never told you that. She's like, I never offered them. I'm like, excuse me? She was like, I'll have the pest control come out again, do an extensive treatment. And I'm like, that's what he was supposed to do the first time, right? So I was like, can I be there when he's there, so I can just, 1, see him spraying for myself, and 2, ask him questions. I said, tell me the truth about this apartment. He says to me verbatim, like not verbatim, but says to me explicitly, he's like, listen, your apartment's not infested, right? He was like, but the bottom floor of the trash room of this building is infested, okay? And you're at a lower level floor, and they're crawling up the chute, and because your apartment is the first one that they have access to, and they can smell you cooking and living, all that stuff, they're gonna come into your apartment. He said, so you're gonna see activity no matter what. As long as you live across from the trash room, you're gonna see activity. And he said the only reason to avoid seeing activity is if your neighbors, right, don't leave their trash on the floor and put their trash in a chute. He's like, as someone who's worked this building for many years, I'm telling you that's not going to happen. He said, so you need extensive treatments every 3 months. And even then, you're going to see activity. So at that point, I knew that I could not stay in that unit. For me, I am not someone who is going to manage having pests. Not when I'm paying almost $2,000 a month in rent. Not when I'm living in a luxury high-rise building. Not when I'm living in general. Trust me. And I know you guys are thinking like, no one's going to live with pests. That's not true. In my apartment hunt, so many people complained about having pests in their units and just did not move out. I know neighbors, no shade to them, former neighbors at my old apartment who have pests and just manage having pests because the rent was so cheap. $1,800 for 689 square feet. I basically was going to tell my property manager, like, hey, like, I need to be moved. Like, that's just the only option. I'm not going to stay in this unit. Like, I'm not going to manage having pests. but she gets fired the same day that I talked to the pest control. It's not funny. It's not funny someone losing their job, but like she gets fired. So I'm like, well, fuck. What am I gonna do about it? What's gonna happen here, right? So I leave for the weekend. He says, I watched him spray. He sprayed around the entire house, every single room, behind the fridge. I mean, sprayed it down. He says, you should be good after 48 hours. So I leave for the weekend with the intention of coming back and staying in a unit until I can get moved. The other units that I did look at that were available were not available until January. So I could not move within this, like the weeks that I had. And we're like talking like a week or two before Christmas. So like nothing was gonna shake until December anyways. So I come back after a weekend and there are multiple dead pests in the traps. And I say, you know what? This is not gonna work for me. I'm not staying here. I'm not living here. So I pack up a lot of my clothes and I go stay with my partner for basically the rest of December until I can figure out what's gonna happen with my apartment. I was like, I need to pack up all of my things because I don't want my things to get infested. Like y'all are telling me that it's not infested yet, but like I'm seeing so many pests that there's no way. So I basically contact the assistant property manager and the acting property manager and I say, y'all need to either commit to moving me to another unit or allow me to break my lease without any penalties, because I had only been living in that unit for going on 2 months. I moved in November. It was now December. I had just paid December rent when I saw the second pest, right? And getting them to even respond to my emails was such an issue. I ended up having to go on LinkedIn, purchase LinkedIn Premium, and like email message the CEO, COO, like all of these high-ranking people, because the property manager before she got fired was not being communicative with me. She was not like giving me any solution. She wasn't being helpful. And I'm like, I am not living with pests, right? So I think maybe a couple days before Christmas, they come to me and they're like, we looked at your apartment, it's not infested, but like we understand that like you don't want to live somewhere uncomfortable. We would never want you to be uncomfortable, so we're going to allow you to break your lease within a month with no penalty. So I basically only paid a couple weeks in January, and then I didn't have to pay anything else, which was amazing, because like if you read about like apartment stuff like that, like most apartments will make you pay like thousands of dollars, like 3, 4, 5 months worth of rent to break a lease. They let me get away with just a month worth of rent, and it was prorated because it was based off the 30 days I got the email, which was the 14th. So so it was like December 14th to January 14th is what I had to pay for. So it's like, okay, Key, you were able to break your lease. That's amazing. So like, why'd you have to start your life over? Like you just had to move apartments. Actually, no, I had to move back home because I could not afford to move into a new apartment. Mind y'all, I had moved in November, spent $3,000+ to move. Then in December, when they told me I could break my lease, I didn't have another apartment to just move into. I didn't have anything lined up. I also didn't have the money for another deposit, first month's rent, and application fee. I had to move to get my stuff out of the apartment. So even though my lease wasn't over until January, I did not want to leave my things in that unit knowing that it had a pest issue. So I hired movers to get them to pack up my entire apartment and move it into a storage up the street. That costs over $1,000. The movers were like a little over $800, and then you had the storage unit was a little over $200, not including like some of the boxes and stuff that were purchased. Now my partner did offer and did pay for that for me, which was amazing. It was my Christmas present. It was a great Christmas present. And I know a lot of people don't agree with getting your bills paid for Christmas, but when you have to move out of your apartment because of pest issues and your partner's like, I will cover it, Merry Christmas, thank you very much, I'll take that. But still, it was still a lot of money, right? So I had to go to my mother and my stepfather, and I literally called them and was like, listen, like this apartment situation has really escalated. I am going to move out. I do not have the patience or the anxiety levels to deal with like not knowing if I'm going to see a pest or not when I walk in, when I wake up. Like one of my neighbors told me that there was one in her bed one time. Like I was like, I'm not gonna be able to deal with that. Can I move back home for free without paying any bills? And can I basically have 2 to 3 months to find another place to live, right? And what you guys have to understand is I'm extremely hyper independent. Having to even like allow for my partner to pay for stuff was really hard for me. Depending on her, like, that was really hard for me. Like, up until the moment she handed her card to the mover, I was prepared to pay, because just in case she changed her mind, right? Just in case, right? And so to have to ask my parents to allow me to move in rent free when they already help take care of 5 kids, it was a really big ask, right? And basically they're just like, yeah, of course, you always have a room here, you always have space here in our home, but we don't have a car for you to use to get to and from work, so you're gonna have to figure it out on your own. Again, here comes my perfect little angel baby partner that she is, and she's like, I have an extra car I don't use, you can use it, I'll bring it up to you, you can use it, it's paid off, it's insured, like, I'll give you gas money, like, just basically just don't crash, you can use it. So yeah, I went from living by myself, completely financially independent, living 15 minutes away from everything, life of luxury, hair, nails, all that stuff, just doing life, you're not worried about nothing, to moving in with my parents, not being able to contribute to any bills because I'm trying to save to move out again, using someone else's car. I've never had a car, never, like, don't own a car or whatever, living 45 minutes out of the city, living with 5 kids and 3 other adults. Like, it was an insane life change. It sucked. I'm not gonna lie, like, so crazy, because I saw a TikTok the other week from this really great creator. I can't think of his name right now, but he basically was just saying how, like, there was a time where he had to move back home because he couldn't afford the place he lived in, and people shouldn't be embarrassed about moving back home. And up until basically like February, I was really in my head about it. I felt like I had failed. I felt like just 6 months ago I was living by myself, paying my own bills, you know, spending on luxuries, hair, nails. I had cleaners come every month. I was shopping every single day, not worried about a thing, not worried about life. And within a matter of just like weeks, everything fell apart. The only thing that remained consistent in my life between fall of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 was my job. Okay, was my job. I realized eventually, right, that like when I was told back in September that I had to move on my apartment, that was like the universe and God being like, it is now time for the next stage of your life. My dad had been telling me, like, it's time for you to move out that apartment, right? Like, it's like, you have grown so much, your life has changed so much, you're in such a different space, like, you really shouldn't be in that same apartment. I'm like, yeah, but like the rent's so cheap though, right? But like, I felt like I was supposed to move out of the building. I was supposed to move on with my life. I was supposed to try out of the neighborhood, a new chapter, all that stuff. But I was just like comfortable. I was comfortable. I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I didn't want to pay more in rent. I didn't want to leave the neighborhood. I had been doing the same routine for 7 years, on the same train line, the same grocery stores, like Uber rides to the same direction. Like, I didn't want my life to change. And so the universe said, you're not getting it. Baby, you're not getting it. You need to start the next chapter of your life. And if you're not gonna get it, I'm gonna show you in a more aggressive way. I could have done without the pests, personally. I think God could have showed me a little other signs, but your girl was being hard-headed. Your girl was being stubborn. And so God said, I'm going to show you that it's time for you to move on, whether you want to or not. And so I had to grow up, y'all. I had to grow up emotionally, mentally. I had to be okay with like not being okay, right? I had to be okay with asking for help. I had to be okay with not being the strongest person in the room, being the strongest person in the relationship, asking for help. So here I am, March 2024. I'm in a brand new apartment. Love that for me. I love my apartment so much. It's 719 square feet. It's the most square footage I've ever had in my life. It's an amazing apartment. It's an amazing location. I'm back in the city. I'm only like 15 to 20 minutes away from everything now, which is great. I have a new job. I got a promotion in January. Love that for me. I'm in a new, very healthy relationship. I have a newfound respect for just like life and like financial decisions and like how to approach life and like, you know, life changes and like being okay with change and being okay with not being comfortable for a little bit so your life can get better. I feel like so much of my life has changed. Like when you're in an apartment for 7 years, that is your world. That's all you know. So leaving that was gut wrenching because it was like against my will almost. It was necessary, but against my will. And then to like go from living by yourself to living at home with a lot of family members with no real privacy and not even your own bathroom, like, it's gonna humble you. But now I feel like I'm such a better woman for it, a better Black queer woman for it. So yeah, that's my story. And I guess I share this because I feel like a lot of times, especially with Black women and Black people, like, we don't want to share our downfalls. Like, life is already so hard for us. The world already looks with us with so much judgment that we don't want to talk about when we aren't the best versions of ourselves. We always want to walk into the room the best versions of ourselves. But let me tell you this. For 2.5 months, I was not the best version of myself. I wasn't even myself. I didn't know who myself was anymore. But now, being humbled and having to take a step back and having to, like, look at life differently has me so much more prepared to what the next chapter in my life is. Yeah, so that's my story. That's my testimony. Hope you guys didn't mind me opening up to you guys like this. I hope someone can take something from my experience and learn from it and, like, apply it to their own lives. And I hope you guys will join me on this journey as I share this next chapter of my life on this channel, the channel galore.